We are back, everyone, on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. Nick Barris along with Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. 737-7587 is the number. If you have a question or comment about a situation you've gone through, hey, consider calling us this morning. We can walk you through it. I mean, there are cases that have come through this show that you've ended up handling. When you talk about whether or not someone may have a case, it comes down, first of all, you know, doctors aren't miracle workers. There are some things they can't cure. You go in and they can't cure you, doesn't mean you have a malpractice case. It's standard of care. Whether or not you've gone in and you've been harmed because they did not meet what the standard of care should be, right?
Right. The standard of care is the legal terminology for the rules. Did the doctor break the rules, or did the nurse break the rules? And if the rules are broken and as a result of that the patient is injured or killed, then you have a case. That's the basic formula.
And there, some, in my opinion, are very obvious. We've done cases. I did a story with you on an individual who went in with a wound to his arm, and someone left a cleanser.
Furniture disinfectant.
Disinfectant. And the doctor grabbed that thinking it was antiseptic or something and sprayed it on his... Right. That's pretty much... Nothing in the legal world is necessarily a slam dunk, but some are more so than others. Right. I mean, how do you get around that?
You don't. You don't get around it. It just becomes a question of how bad injured he is.
Okay, so just giving you some ideas, and the lines are open. Sometimes it picks up later in the show, so get in here now. Let's take Ann real quick, because I know we have some other cases to talk about. Ann, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Ann.
First off, let me say that I don't have a thyroid.
Okay.
And several years back, I was having issues and had to be seen by an endocrinologist. And after 3 years, I had still not seen the doctor, only a PA. And I told my primary care physician I wanted him to follow me. If I wasn't going to be seen by the doctor, I wasn't going to pay big bucks. Once again, I'm having issues with my thyroid levels, and I'm losing drastic amount of weight, and it's affecting my internal organs, and because of my insurance, I'm once again having to go to the same endocrinologist. I specifically made the appointment with the doctor, and when I got there, a male entered the room, gave me a name, didn't identify himself as a nurse, a tech, a PA, or a doctor, said he was going to draw blood work, blah, 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 see me in 6 weeks. Am I legally responsible for paying for that doctor's appointment since I wasn't seen by a doctor? I'm restricted on who I go to with my insurance. I have to be seen by an endocrinologist because I don't have a thyroid.
Okay, I see your point. And again, a lot of people are going to ask you these types of questions that aren't basically lawsuits because you know the system, my friend.
Right,
so.
right. Of course, this isn't a medical negligence or malpractice case. What she's talking about, in my mind, is an insurance, perhaps a breach of contract case. I mean, there's two things you want to look at. First of all, what does her health insurance require under those circumstances? She may not have the right under her policy to see an endocrinologist each time she goes, because a lot of times they'll have extenders. They call them physician extenders, nurse practitioners, technicians, physician assistants. I don't know her policy, so I can't speak to that. The question, though, about, hey, I made an appointment with an endocrinologist, I called the clinic, and that's what I expected to get. Again, if someone comes into the office and they're not an endocrinologist, just there and say, well, what am I doing here? I specifically made an appointment with an endocrinologist, which harkens back to what you and I talked about. You have to ask questions, and if you don't get the service you're supposed to get, leave and make another appointment. But again, we don't know what her insurance policy says, and that would probably dictate how this is handled.
Let's go next to Stan. Hi, Stan.
Hi, how are you guys this morning?
Good, Stan. Can we help you with something?
Well, I hope so. It's a kind of simple question. I have fell twice in my driveway and injured my arms bad, and I've have that taken care of, Medicare. But my landlord don't seem to want to fix anything.
Oh, so you fell in your driveway and you know you got hurt, and the landlord's not fixing anything.
He's not done anything.
Well, that's not a malpractice question, but that may be a landlord lease issue, huh?
Yeah, or a premises liability question where he's got a claim against a landlord for having a premises that isn't safe. There are a lot of premises liability lawyers out there. People, I call them slip and fall lawyers.
Right, I was about to say.
Who can handle that type of case? That's not the
Is
work
that personal injury and stuff?
Yes, it is.
That's basically what it is. So yeah, you know what?
He may have a claim, but and it's not hard to find slip and fall lawyers out there. There's a bunch of them.
Okay, yeah. So maybe sue your landlord if you feel you were hurt and he's not fixing that. I'm trying to think of some of the cases that we had been following. Have there been any big settlements nationally, be it class action or otherwise, of late in medical malpractice? And I know you're involved in some class action cases with regard to medicines, correct?
That's correct. Medications. I have not seen any large class action or large settlements against a group of doctors. But I want to go back to the Joan Rivers case. You remember you and I talked about it?
Sure.
We've talked about it repeatedly. And the reason I come back to it is they had another interview with Joan's daughter, and I learned more about the facts of the case.
Yeah, and remind folks, you know who Joan Rivers was, and how she died under those circumstances was something where it's like, wait a second.
She was having a procedure called an esophageal dilatation, which is just a fancy word for they stick a tube down your esophagus, and they basically broaden it so food will pass better. She had trouble swallowing food. And because of her age, she was 81 at the time, she was a high-risk patient for something going wrong either during the procedure or perhaps if she had a cardiac event, she needed to have advanced life-saving equipment there provided by a hospital. Long story short, she went to an outpatient clinic to have this done against the advice of one of her doctors, and then the outpatient clinic, who should have gone ahead and referred her to the hospital, said, no, we'll take her. And during the procedure, remember, her doctor took a selfie with her. And of course, they didn't know about this till she died. And while this is going on, Joan crashed. Yeah. And they didn't have the proper equipment there fast enough to resuscitate her. So by the time she gets marched over to the hospital, she's dead. And one of the things I found out was the clinic actually fired its director within a month of the investigation, because the director had violated a number of rules that were required to be followed when you have a patient like Miss Rivers. And the reason I bring that up with you, Nick, is in a case like that, you have to be careful about who you go to, and you have to do a proper investigation about the type of clinic, the type of people that are going to do any type of operative procedure.
This is Joan Rivers, okay? This is a wealthy woman. This was in L.A., wasn't it? Or
New York.
Oh, it was New York. Right? I knew it was one of the main cities. And so you would think that she, based on references, I don't know who referred her to this, had to be going to probably what was considered a fairly high-end clinic. I mean, that's what's scary. I mean, you'd think, I understand me, maybe I wouldn't know, but you'd think Joan Rivers and her people would have known where to take her, and they certainly had the resources not to do it cheap.
Do you think Joan knew that during this procedure her doctor was going to sit there and take a selfie?
No, of course not.
That's what I'm talking about, is checking people out.
Well, how do you know whether you get a doctor that's going to be that dumb?
Well, I don't know if it's so much dumb as it's somebody that you have to get to know pretty well and be able to trust well, because I can't see a single doctor in Nashville that would do that. And I've run across a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
Some of my friends, some I've sued. I can't think of anybody that would do something like that. And it again makes me think that you have to be very, very careful about who you retain, in essence, as your doctor to perform very delicate procedures that can kill you if they're not done properly, or if someone's not paying attention, which is what happened here.
Another case, high profile, I don't know that since you've been on we've talked about this, maybe we touched on it last time, the Prince case.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that it's a malpractice thing, but there were issues, and it goes into the whole issue these days of opiate addictions and pain pills. Can those sometimes be linked to malpractice? I mean, when I'm talking about, and I don't know this was the case with Prince, though he definitely had some of that in his system, but where a doctor just continually, just knowingly writes script for you to continue to get these pills, and if you get sick or die because you're taking these, and I know part of the responsibility is you, but you're an addict, and these doctors know better when you're coming back every week for 30-day supply and they keep writing it for you. I mean, can that be malpractice?
Well, the answer is yes. I do not know enough about Prince's case to comment on whether or not there's going to be a claim arising out of that case, but I do know one where we all know about, and that's Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
where his doctor
propofol.
got him hooked on propofol and kept prescribing propofol for him, and Jackson OD'd on it along with the other drugs he was taking.
Yeah.
But the answer to your question is yes. If a physician overprescribes medication against the standard of care, violates the rules by giving too much when he shouldn't, and the patient gets hurt or dies, yeah, you can have a claim against them.
Okay.
Even though the patient's addicted, you can have a claim if the physician gets the patient addicted.
And yeah, because the physician should know better, you would think. Okay, on that note, let's take a break. When we come back, we can take more calls, 737-7587. Have a question in mind about maybe a result you had from a surgery? You know someone that you had questions about how things played out, or maybe a doctor's visit? Give us a call. We'll be back with more with Clint Kelly right after this.